Hello again, and welcome to this webinar on the Dare UK Early Adopter Projects, looking at the key learnings and outcomes from the work that they conducted with us between January of 2025 and March 2026. Hopefully you can see my slides already, so I'm just going to begin by taking you through some housekeeping. So if you could just remain muted throughout, unless you're invited to ask a question, because there will be some Q&A sessions where you will have the opportunity to speak. In the Q&A sessions, you can use the raise hand feature, and then you'll be called on to ask your question. Or equally, you can put your question into the chat, either whilst the presentation is going on or during the Q&A session. Just standard reminder, just to make sure that all discussions are respectful. The usual stuff, don't interrupt, keep on topic. We'll avoid web talk for now. And if you can just keep your visual off during the presentations, it sometimes helps with the bandwidth and minimizing disruptions. But when we're having the Q&A, then you can put your visual on there. And just to say that this session is going to be recorded, and the recording will go on to Dare UK channels, mainly our website, after the event. And all slides will also be put onto the website as well for you to look over. In terms of the agenda for today, I'm going to begin by giving an overview of the portfolio of projects in terms of what their aims were and how they worked with the TREvolution program of work. Then each project will have the opportunity to present on what they did. There'll be 10 minutes for each presentation, and after each presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions. So there'll be about 5 minutes for questions and answers. Those, as I said before, can be done verbally or in the chat. And if we do find we run out of time, you can continue to ask questions in the chat, and then the relevant person will respond to those questions. And then we'll close. Difficult to sense when we may run ahead. We've got an hour and a half, which I intentionally did to give hopefully ample time, but let's see how we go with it. So just to talk to you about the Early Adopters program of work. These projects, 6 of them, were funded through a competitive open selection process. We put a call on the Dare UK website, and an independent panel reviewed applications and selected these projects. And the aim of their projects was for them to work with the Dare UK TREvolution program. Some of you may already be aware, but TREvolution is a program of work that is looking at how to advance TRE capabilities in the UK by looking at things like adopting standards, universal standards that allow for TREs to work together, to work more efficiently and effectively, and to build trust for the public to ensure that the right security measures are in place and that TREs are trustworthy. TREvolution is also looking at how to enable federation, so the ability for data to be analysed from more than one TRE without that data necessarily even having to move, because the governance structures and technologies in place to enable that. And finally, most importantly, TREvolution is looking at how to accelerate research, how to make research much more efficient, timely, and effective, ultimately to benefit the public. So the early adopters were funded to work with TREvolution, the tools and the standards that they were developing, looking at what was possible within the TREs they were working with, what was acceptable within the TREs that they were working with in terms of the governance rules for each respective TRE, and whether or not tools that TREvolution were developing could be implemented in their own TREs. And finally, what was useful, whether actually these tools that TREvolution were developing and these capabilities and standards had a positive impact on the work that they were doing in some way. So each of the adopters worked with different tools within TREvolution. The Fridge project is slightly different in what it did, and Anthony and Jim will talk in more detail about that because it came at a different angle. And they started in February and ended in March. Now, the key thing here was that TREvolution and the tools and standards that it's working on, they aren't yet finalized. It's very much a work in progress. The actual TREvolution program started in March after the early adopters, but it built on the Dare UK driver projects, a program of work that took place in the previous phase. And so they were building on those tools, but evolving them, refining them to make them stronger. And the work is not yet done. There's still one more year of the TREvolution program of work. So the early adopters really worked closely with them to help give feedback, to help test and refine what TREvolution was developing to improve iterately their work. So it really was a collaborative program of work where TREvolution and the early adopters were working closely together, and the early adopters were giving regular, useful feedback to them to help improve upon the direction of travel for TREvolution. In terms of TREvolution, as I said, they are continuing to develop those capabilities and standards. There's one more year currently of funding up till, well, just under a year now, but up till March 27. And there is one remaining early adopter project, Socrates, who started after these 6 projects you're going to be hearing from today. So the sacro aspect of TREvolution in particular, we're working very closely with Socrates over the next few months. And finally, TREvolution are now working with a new program of work called the Dare UK Research Exemplars. And the purpose of those is for them now to use the TREvolution tools and standards to conduct real research studies. So we've had the early adopters who were the TREs, the infrastructures, who looked at the tools and standards and technologies. And now the real research exemplars are going to be doing real research studies and seeing how the TREvolution tools help to make that process easier and more efficient. On the side there, we have the list of the research centers projects, and I'll share a link in the chat for you to find out more about them. So I'm now going to hand over to the early adopter projects for them to speak in a lot more detail about what they did, which TREvolution tools they worked with, and how their work impacted on the TREvolution program, and how it also impacted them in terms of the work they were doing. So first up, we have, wait for it, Fridge. So that's Jim and Anthony to present. So you can share your screens.
Great. Are you able to see my slides?
Yeah, we can see that.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle, for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. As Michelle said, Fridge is sort of like a bit of an odd one out in the early adopters projects, in that it was much more focused around building new capabilities. And Fridge is all about how do we do trusted research on high performance computers. So a lot of research now, it needs specialized hardware, high performance hardware. AI type work, machine learning type work in particular needs a lot of GPUs, graphical processing units. And that kind of hardware, it's expensive, it's specialist. It's not usually present in TREs, so local TREs that are NHS trusts or university might operate. So the idea was, can we leverage the national scale supercomputing? We've got supercomputers which are available for research across the country, lots of really powerful hardware, really well run and configured. And in particular, can we use the new air systems built from the ground up for AI research? In doing that, we would be enabling access to this powerful hardware, which enables new types of research. We'd also be making research more cost efficient, because this type of hardware, it's expensive to buy and provision locally. If you want to effectively rent it in the cloud, that's also incredibly expensive. But we already have this national capability for supercomputing. So the question is, like, if we can tap into that, that's going to be much more cost effective, which lets us to do more research for less money. Really important when this research is funded by public money, essentially coming out of taxes. The challenge is supercomputers are not TREs. They don't have the controls and isolation protections that we would expect in a system where we're doing research with sensitive data. So the whole challenge of Fridge is, how do we bridge that gap? How do we extend TREs into supercomputers? Now, in tackling that problem, we had a few choices. One option is to go for a full stack, what we call a full stack TRE, which is a sort of a big, complete trusted research environment with all the components you need. So basically build a brand new TRE from the ground up aimed at supercomputers. But another option would be to use sort of lean on the existing TREs, which we already have, and just build a minimal satellite TRE, which we can deploy in a supercomputer and link to an existing TRE. That became the sort of clear best option for us because it's very small. It's just what we need to exploit HPC and nothing more. So that keeps things simple in terms of developing it. It means we're relying on the existing governance and systems and technology in TREs. And it was also appealing to the HPC people because it means we're taking up a smaller amount of their space. They're able to more efficiently distribute their resources because these are multi-user systems, lots of different research projects, sensitive and non-sensitive, running at the same time. So having this minimal satellite means that they can distribute their resources in the best possible way. And it's also sort of allows us to explore a new model of TRE federation. So we are effectively borrowing a part of the supercomputer to use for a TRE, and we're sharing some of the responsibility there between the existing TRE and the supercomputer. And this was something we called this the shared responsibility model, and this is something we were keen to feed into the SATRA specification for TREs. So to contrast this a little bit, there's another project, there's a TREvolution project called Cater, and this is more like the full stack TRE I was describing. Now, both Cater and Fridge are built on technology called Kubernetes, which is a sort of cross-platform way to deploy applications. And as there were some overlap similarities, we worked closely with them to try and prevent duplicating and maximize the possibility for these things to be combined or work together in the future. And our focus on providing security, isolating Fridge from the rest of the supercomputer, led to some improvements in security in Cater. And we collaborated together on how to secure Kubernetes, limiting what users are able to do and controlling the network traffic, restricting that to only what's essential. The way that we achieve this security is what we call the TRE tenancy. So the important difference between Cater and Fridge is that in Cater, you're imagining one organization owns the infrastructure, the computer, and the TRE, but in Fridge, we're saying that's different. This is someone else's computer that we're using. So the real challenge was how do we really secure the isolate part of that so that we can say this is our TRE on someone else's computer. So we've got to isolate that from the supercomputer and from all of the other work that's happening there. The tenancy is how we achieve that. So it's a secure portion of the supercomputer. It's the networking and the storage are both isolated from all of the other users and processes on that system. It's created and maintained by the owner of the supercomputer. So they create this secure boundary, but everything inside is controlled by the TRE operator. So the supercomputer admins have no ability to view or modify what's happening inside of the tenancy, but also users inside the tenancy cannot break out and interfere with stuff on the supercomputer. And as we went on, we realized this idea was looking quite significant. It might be one of the most important outcomes of the of the project. And as TREvolution is building a lot of Kubernetes components, we sort of have this vision for the TRE tenancy being an important enabling technology in the future, where this whole ecosystem of sort of their Kubernetes projects can be deployed inside a TRE tenancy as required. So you can run TREs with all these modular components anywhere you want, because you've got this secure isolation. Where we got to by the end of the Fridge project, we have implemented Fridge on both of the air supercomputers, so Dawn and Isambard. Doing that, we've demonstrated that this is viable, this sort of shared responsibility approach can work. All of our code and documentation are published openly, and we've attracted quite a bit of interest from organizations who want to extend their sensitive work onto supercomputers, particularly the NHS SDE network, who contacted us, and we were quite proud to say we're highlighted in the government's AI for Science Strategy report. And as Michelle alluded to earlier, this work is carrying on into an exemplar project called AirBridge, where we're really looking to take the next step in moving Fridge to production. So we've sort of proved an experimental way how it can work. AirBridge is all about taking real world sensitive data sets and applying those with Fridge, and running AI work on air using those real world data sets. There was also a public involvement and engagement strand to Fridge, and Anthony is going to tell you a bit about that.
Thanks, Jim. So you now know all about Fridge, but what was our PPIE plan or public involvement plan? We wanted to tap into the existing planned groups, the TREvolution Core Public Involvement Group and public involvement groups for demonstrator health projects. But that was the plan. And the other part of it was relationship building. So the relationships between public involvement and the project. And my relationship began working with Martin O'Reilly, who was the leader of the project. And Martin and I got to know each other on SARTRA, which is Standardized Architecture for Trusted Research Environment, which was a previous project. And then once I got involved in the project, Martin's leadership became really important in building relationships with the whole team. And what I did was we did some public involvement training with the team and upskilling as to what was public involvement, how to get the best out of public involvement, and ongoing support for that. So the reality was that the plan had to change, and that often happens with public involvement. Sometimes you have to be flexible and things have to flex. So integration with other public involvement groups didn't work quite as planned. Both of those groups were still being established, so we couldn't actually work with them. The DARE UK had an AI dialogue workshop in Birmingham, and that was absolutely brilliant. We learned a lot about that. We heard concerns around artificial intelligence, but we also heard consensus that research was important and that artificial intelligence has a place with appropriate safeguards. Martin and I learned how to present better, actually, because Martin did the presentation first, and people were looking a bit kind of glassy-eyed, kind of, what does he mean? And Martin and I learned that if he creates the slides and tells me about the presentation, I present, and he acts as my wingman. It was a much better way of working. We also had excellent engagement with the collaboration cafes, and those generated great points for project connection and input. We had a dedicated collaboration cafe for Fridge, which was so helpful. But yes, all of the collaboration cafes fed into our public involvement, because I fed back what was going on in the cafes and the team members came along. So what did we learn? Well, we learned not to rely on other public involvement groups to set up our own and do our in-house stuff. What would we do differently? I think starting with our own group from the beginning would be a good thing. I think the training worked well. Certainly the relationships in the team are absolutely core to getting public involvement right, so that public involvement's at the heart of everything we do. And we've taken this forward into Ebbridge, and our public involvement work there is expanding into collaboration cafes, explainers. We're having regular meetings with our public involvement group, and as I've said to the team, it's the best public involvement I've ever done. It's the team is so focused on public involvement. They're spending we think about 20% of their time engaging with the public involvement work. So that's my bit of the presentation.
Thank you. Is that yeah, we're up to time.
I
Yeah.
think that's us. Yeah, sorry if we went over.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Thank you. Fantastic presentation. Really great to hear about all the work that you've been doing. And as Jim mentioned, so yeah, they're involved in 2 other DARE projects, all kind of enhancing aspects of the fridge work. So a real world exemplar project with that's Airbridge, and then Trusty as well, which is a next gen project. So lots more to come in this space. Okay, now we're going to move on to a video presentation from ONS. Unfortunately, no one from the team was able to join us. So I'm going to play their video presentation, and then I will share their contact details so that if anyone wants to find out more about their work or has any questions, you can contact them via emails and they send their apologies. So fingers crossed this works. Let's do this. Disappeared. Technology can be very frustrating. This worked a few minutes ago. Okay, let me put it on my screen. We'll do it that way. Okay, can I speak on about reactions if you can see and hear this?
Hi everyone. Unfortunately, the ONS team were unable to attend in person today, so I'm recording this presentation to share some of the key insights and findings from the SOAR project. My name is Ollie Webb and I'm the Head of Statistical Support within the ONS Secure Research Service. I was part of the SOAR project team, which was led by Matt Wilson, supporting the testing and evaluation of the SACRO tools with both researchers and output checkers across the Secure Research Service. SOAR, which stands for Semi-Automated Output Assessment and Review, explored whether the SACRO tools developed by the University of the West of England could be successfully implemented within a large trusted research environment, such as the ONS Secure Research Service. The project aimed to assess whether these tools could be integrated into our operational processes and help address some of the challenges facing trusted research environments as secure research access and output checking continues to increase. Over the next few minutes, I'll take you through the project's key findings, lessons learned, and overall outcomes. If you'd like to explore the work in more detail, the final report is available on the DARE UK Znoo page. I'll start with some background. Within ONS, we operate the Secure Research Service, one of the UK's largest trusted research environments. We currently support just under 800 active projects with more than 3,000 researchers working in the environment. As you might expect, that generates a significant volume of output requests. For over a year, we've consistently received more than 200 output requests each month, and recently that figure has been approaching 300. Based on our own metrics and wider trends across the TRE community, we expect that demand to continue increasing. So what was our motivation to get involved? This growing demand was the key driver behind our involvement in SOAR. Trusted research environments need to find ways to manage increasing volumes of outputs while continuing to apply rigorous disclosure control standards. We wanted to explore whether technology could help us scale our processes more efficiently without compromising security. We were also interested in whether these tools could improve the quality of output checking itself, helping identify disclosure risks earlier and reducing the likelihood of disclosive outputs being exported. So the tools we evaluated, as part of this project, we tested two TREvolution tools. Researchers in the SRS tested the ACRO analytical package, while our output checkers tested the SACRO viewer. So what were some of the key findings? The project involved more than 40 researchers across 25 projects, providing us with a broad range of perspectives on both the benefits and limitations of the tools. So there were several important findings that emerged. First being improved efficiency. We found clear potential for reducing trusted research environment workloads. The most significant benefit came from researchers receiving feedback on potential disclosure risks before they submitted outputs for checking. Importantly, this feedback was provided without requiring intervention from the trusted research environment output checkers. We also saw efficiency gains from greater consistency in output submissions. SACRO produced outputs in a more standardized format than many manual submissions, making them quicker to review. For example, rather than output checkers needing to manually locate counts within outputs or request additional supporting files, the information was often presented more consistently from the outset. Together, these improvements reduce the amount of back and forth between researchers and output checkers, freeing up capacity to manage increasing demand. This aligns with one of the core findings from the project, the potential for reducing trusted research environment workloads through identification of disclosure risks before submission and greater consistency of output requests. Also, we found about the importance of collaboration. Another key finding was the importance of close collaboration between researchers, trusted research environments, and tool developers. One of our biggest lessons learned was that researcher engagement and support were just as important as the functionality of the tools themselves. Early in the project, we haven't clearly communicated that SACRO was still in the early stages of development, which understandably influenced user expectations. In later cohorts, we addressed this by being more transparent about the maturity of the tools and strengthening feedback loops between researchers, ONS, and the SACRO team. This significantly improved engagement and helped us provide clearer and more actionable feedback to support future development. We also found that introducing new tools into secure research environments can require substantial researcher support, particularly where internet access is unavailable. Clear guidance, documentation, and troubleshooting support proved essential, and this feedback directly informed improvements to supporting materials. This reinforced the importance of continuous collaboration between researchers, trusted research environments, and tool developers when introducing new technology into secure environments. Finally, the project demonstrated that this approach can operate successfully in practice. Researchers were able to generate outputs using real, secure research service data, and those outputs were subsequently reviewed and approved through the SACRO viewer. Given the early stage of development, this was a very encouraging result and provided tangible evidence that this type of technology can work within a large operational trusted research environment. Importantly, it showed that researchers can prepare and submit approvable outputs using SACRO, demonstrating that semi-automated disclosure control can operate within a trusted research environment. So what did the project ultimately achieve? First, it provided real-world evidence on the feasibility of semi-automated disclosure control. It moved the conversation from theory to practice, grounding future discussions in the experiences of researchers and output checkers using the tools in a live, trusted researcher environment. This provides a much stronger evidence base for future decision making than hypothetical discussions or controlled testing alone. The project delivered real-world evidence and helped move the discussion on semi-automated from theory to evidence. Secondly, it demonstrated the long-term value of these tools. By identifying disclosure risk earlier in the research process, researchers can make outputs safe before submission, reducing reliance on reactive and often time-consuming manual feedback from output checkers. This highlights the potential for disclosure risks to be identified earlier during analysis rather than at the point of export. Finally, SOAR has helped create a roadmap for future development. The breadth of feedback we gathered helped us better understand researcher needs, trusted researcher environment requirements, and the priorities that are likely to have the greatest impact on wider adoption. The project clarified what researchers need from semi-automated disclosure tools, identified the requirements trusted research environments have for onboarding these approaches into business as usual processes, and informed priorities for future development. Ultimately, SOAR demonstrated that semi-automated disclosure control is no longer just a concept. While there is still work to do, we've shown that it can operate within a large, trusted research environment such as ONS's Secure Research Service, and has the potential to help the growing demands facing trusted research environments across the UK. Thank you for your time, and if there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer them via the Stats Support email address, which is statistical.support@ons.gov.uk. That's statistical.support@ons.gov.uk. Thank you.
Okay, so I will put that email address into the chat for people to refer to should they have any questions. Just to note as well, just because of time, we did skip the question and answer section of Anthony and Jim's presentation on Fridge. So again, if you do have any questions, just drop it into the chat and Jim or Anthony will endeavour to respond to those questions or we'll follow up later on. So now we move on to Vista, presenting on their work. They were led by Health Innovation East and the University of Cambridge. And we have Laura Clark to speak about the work that they did in their project.
Hi, Michelle, and thank you for inviting me to talk. And I will share my screen and just rearrange windows. So hopefully you can see everything. There we go. So yeah, so I'm here to talk about Vista, and let's see if the system will collaborate. So apologies, I can't see you at all because of how it's working, and so please speak up if you want to ask something during the presentation, but obviously hopefully we'll have time for Q&A after. And so the goals of Vista were to look at Sartre, Sacro and Sacro-ML in the context of the Eastern England SDE. And the ideas here were sort of, I suppose, similar to SOAR, looking about safe and efficient research output egress. We're at a much smaller scale to the ONS at this point in time. So we're hoping to sort of embed things as we go and maintain scalability rather than having to catch up on what must be a wonderful problem to have with so many users. Then, of course, again, enabling the training of AI models safely, and then looking at Sartre, which is a standard to help understand the competencies of a trusted research environment and where they are doing well and where maybe improvement is needed. And like was mentioned by Fridge, public input and the public perspectives were really important as a part of this. And so I'll give you a little bit of insight about how we included our core public advisory group in all of this work. So for Sacro, this is where we were sort of operationalizing the use of Sacro in the context of researchers working in the SDE. And so we already had Sacro installed, so we knew that it functioned, and we wanted to establish good processes to help researchers know how to use it. And we worked closely with the Sacro team, and they were sort of put in a lot of work to improve their documentation, which has really helped with this process. It's worth noting that it's a fantastic tool for descriptive statistics, and it really does make that process more efficient and has sort of sped up our ability to assess descriptive statistics. Obviously, in the sort of research some people do, they produce quite complex outputs that are less amenable to this semi-automated disclosure review, which requires sort of a hybrid approach. And we're still working through and are happy to work with the Sacro team on how best to make this efficient when you can't necessarily use the semi-automated process for all of the stats being produced. But yeah, so we had a great engagement with the Sacro team. They were very helpful to understand how to do things and to listen to feedback and improve. If you go and look at their documentation, it's really great at this point in time. And then moving on to Sacro AI. So I think it's clear that AI and ML are becoming a core piece of all research and a lot of sort of functionality. And so making sure people can use sort of sensitive data in these trusted research environments to train and validate ML models is really important. And Sacro ML gives us the opportunity to do the sort of similar disclosure control on a trained ML model than Sacro allows you to do on descriptive statistics. And so that's one piece of it, but obviously looking at things like the 5 safes and other governance considerations around AI, we also needed a sort of bigger framework. And so we were able to build on processes like Release AI and the Grail framework that had been built sort of as part of previous iterations and sort of are still ongoing efforts to standardize or give good guidance to let everybody do safe and trusted research that delivers public benefit while respecting patient privacy. And so we also delivered, as well as testing Sacro ML, an AI risk assessment toolkit that's sort of a sort of reference implementation of the guidance that emerged from Release AI. During the testing, and this is understandable as a new tool, there obviously were some performance issues and sort of length of runtime and the depth of checking that might be done while a model is being produced. And so we were able to work with the Sacro team, and they've implemented additional features to make it sort of more plausible to use along the way, as well as at the very end of a process. So if you do highlight, you can find your issues early and adjust your approach, which I think is a fantastic. And then we've actually now run through the governance framework for a new project that's coming on board very shortly, and it will be great to reflect on how that's gone with a new project that's happened after Vista. It hasn't quite made it all the way through our data access process yet. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to continue working with the community around AI governance and how to make sure people can trust that this is being done in a safe manner while delivering the great public benefit that is possible from these sorts of tools. And then we move to Sartre. So obviously this is sort of in parallel to the work we were doing with Sacro and Sacro ML, and sort of disclosure checking and strong auditability of data being released from a TRE is of course part of the Sartre standard, but it also covers a lot broader set of standards and recommendations. The Eastern England SDE was actually built using Sartre as a reference sort of architecture. So perhaps unsurprisingly, when we assessed against Sartre, we scored very highly. All of the mandatory fields and the majority of the sort of recommended and optional things were met. It is worth noting, I think one of our key pieces of feedback, and I think this has been improved in the new iteration of Sartre that's been released, is the first round was maybe slightly more focused on on-prem TREs and how they worked, and ours is a cloud-based system in AWS. And so sometimes there was some challenges in how to best interpret a clause that was written in the context of an on-prem environment for a cloud-based environment. But again, the Sartre team were very happy to hear feedback and to work with us to adjust things and make sure we gave ourselves appropriate ratings in the places where maybe it didn't fit our model quite as well. As part of this, we were also sort of running through establishing our ISO 27701 accreditation. And so between that and Sartre, we were able to drive sort of operational improvements and improvements to our sort of documentation and artifacts to make sure we are very clear about the evidence about how our system works and how it is safe and secure to help with all of these accreditations. And we helped the Sartre team, along with many other people, to deliver a sort of a set of mappings between all the standards, not just Sartre and ISO, but also DEA accreditation, which many trusted research environments need, and DSPT, which obviously most of the health data TREs sort of have, either for themselves or because they're affiliated with a sort of healthcare organization. And through this collaboration, this mapping will help any new organization or anybody who needs to sort of dip their toe in a new accreditation that they don't already have to know what evidence they already have, how can they sort of bootstrap from where they are to this new accreditation, and then maybe help us all sort of more sort of rationalize, so everybody doesn't have to do sort of 101 different assessments. We can help sort of make the process more efficient and give clear guidance on how to demonstrate and evidence the sort of platform safety and the platform operational model. And then, as I said at the start, of course, we embedded public engagement throughout this process. We were lucky that we didn't have to establish a new PPIE group. The Eastern England SDE already had its core public advisory group. And so we were able to engage with them, and they were fantastic in how much they engaged with both our project Vista and with TREvolution in general, to sort of make sure we could effectively explain to anybody what we were doing and what the goals were, and why we were sort of balancing the need and requirement for privacy alongside making sure we were still enabling research and enabling public benefit from sort of establishing these processes. And they helped us to improve our governance, to make sure our communication and our approaches were clear and transparent to everybody. You didn't need to be an AI domain expert to understand our AI risk management strategy. And I think that was really valuable, as was how much they engaged with the general TREvolution sort of engagement in the collaboration cafes. And both through feedback and just engaging in those things, they've really been able to sort of develop a voice in the broader sense of how TREvolution moves forward and how TREvolution supports the sort of sensitive data research across the UK. And so that's been fantastic to see. And I think a really important part of all of this is ensuring we maintain public engagement and public trust. So when we do deliver value, it's not tainted with a sort of fear that somehow the wrong people have their data, or the wrong things are being done with their data. But I will stop at this point, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak, Michelle. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Perfectly timed, almost to the second. So yeah, fantastic presentation. Really good to hear about all the work that you did with the project, working with so many of the TREvolution tools and really causing great impact there. Any questions for Laura and the team? Laura, there is one from Martin rolled in the chat. So he just mentions that the UK Biobank logo is included in one of, okay, so it's a broader question. So it's included in one of the fridge slides. So around kind of increased transparency, accountability and trust, did UK Biobank have any useful lessons to share from the high profile breach? So I think this is actually more to Anthony and Jim, in terms of, I guess, in your conversations with UK Biobank, whether they had any reflections on what happened there with the data breach that took place.
I think I can say a little bit about that. I don't want to sort of speak for UK Biobank, but in our conversations with them, I think something that's sort of important to understand is that historically, some of their data sets been available to researchers, and the data was collected, curated, and then sent to researchers. So every researcher would have their own local copy of that data. So that relies on a lot of trust in those researchers, because if they lose it, if they leave it on the train, if they accidentally share it somewhere they shouldn't, that's a data breach. And as the sort of TRE technology has been evolving, in the conversations I've had with biobank people, there's quite a strong enthusiasm to find other ways to let researchers access data. So they're really trying to balance the principles of making the data they've got as accessible as possible for research, so that we can get the benefits of using that data, but not sort of putting all the burden for security on the researchers themselves. So Biobank are developing a TRE platform for researchers. They're going to be moving to a model. I think at the moment you can still get exemptions to sort of bypass that, but that's not going to be so true and in the future. And they are, I think, they're very actively engaging with us on addressing these questions of, if research needs HPC, how do we use that in a safe, secure way? So I think from like the TRE side, from how I have and like the projects I've worked on has been involved with the UK Biobank, I think there is a bit of a shift in attitude or approach to building on TREs using these like technical policy controls to improve security.
Thank you, Jim. That's really useful. Yeah, if we do you want to delve into that further, if you have any follow-up questions, Martha, you can just put those into the chat. But yeah, Jim, great answer. Laura, do you have, sorry, not Laura, does anyone have any questions for Laura and the Vista project? We have time for one, but if not, we can continue on. And if anything comes to mind, the questions can go into the chat where Laura will then pick it up. Okay, so thank you, Laura. Going to hand over to Kate now from the Panorama project. Yep, we can see it all fine, but you need to unmute yourself.
That would work, wouldn't it? So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm Kate O'Sullivan. I'm Chief Data Officer at Research Data Scotland. And I'm presenting today on the Panorama project, which was a project that we did at the University of Sheffield and my incredible Data Connect team there. We were sorry, let me just move my screen along. So the Panorama project was a consortium of partners from across the north of England. It was the Yorkshire and Humber SDE, the Northwest SDE, and the Northeast North Cumbria SDE. The SDEs are the NHS, part of the NHS England Secure Data Environment Network, and we covered a population of 15.5 million across those different trusted research environments. We focused on doing feasibility assessments of all of the TREvolution tools being developed in real world environments. And we thought, what better way to test tools that are helped to design and support federation by actually doing it as a federation. So we worked together as partners across the north of England to see whether we could really enable real world federation using these capabilities. So we tested the SATRA capability to help us establish whether we could support organization level federated information governance. So what we mean by that is that normally research governance happens on a per project basis. So you create the governance framework for a specific project and then you dismantle it. So we were using SATRA to see whether we could actually do a kind of persistent organization level federation that could support many, many different kinds of projects between those partners. We also tested the 5 Safes TES, which is a federated analysis tool. So the data would stay in each of our environments, but we could support queries by researchers across all 3 partners. They would receive the kind of outputs of that data, but the data itself would never leave their environments. And then finally, like some of the other early adopters, we were testing SACRO, but not only were we testing whether we could get it up and running in each of our distinct environments, but how we would actually do output checking, either prior to sending out the analysis, prior to sending out the analyzed results from this 5 Safes TES queries, or by actually pooling the kind of analysis from all 3 environments, and then how we would do a kind of disclosure control of all of that kind of aggregated data by one partner. We had a number of project outputs, and because we were focusing on the feasibility of federation in the context of a federation, we realized this wasn't just technical. It was very much grounded in the actual operations of all 3 of the partners. So the reports that we produced were both kind of technical in nature, more geared towards people that are operating trusted research environments, or technical colleagues that actually support the underlying infrastructure of those environments. But we also produced operational reports that can help organizations think about how they approach federation. So whilst we were really kind of originally focused on a lot of the kind of technical capabilities of TREvolution, our project really transitioned into thinking about how you would make this work and actually become real, and then how you maintain it over time. So one of the challenges of being an early adopter, we realized very quickly that we don't speak the same language. Technical colleagues don't speak the same language. Information governance colleagues don't speak the same language. Operational colleagues don't speak the same language, and researchers don't speak the same language. So we realized one of the biggest findings of this, of the project, was that we had to create a shared language, and this was required to operationally function. As Michelle alluded to earlier, the tools were all in active development. So whilst we tried to do feasibility where we could in our development, in our live environments, there were oftentimes the case that we had to only get things working or up and running in test environments. So we didn't get the kind of full, the full reality of using things in a live environment. Again, one of the biggest challenges of being an early adopter is that there is literally no manual for how to make federation operational. So we were absolutely like flying by the seat of our pants, but it was incredible because it gave us a lot of real world learnings for how we could translate this and move forward with it, or to help other organizations do this too. We also had the challenge of partners being incredibly good at operations and delivery, but less themselves being researchers. And so we oftentimes had to kind of take a step back and say, we know that this is a research program, but actually we have to support colleagues in doing research, not just in doing delivery. And then I will point to like the very obvious, it was a 1-year project. That is really hard to do. It's really ambitious. It's really hard to deliver in 1 year's time, but we're incredibly proud of the work that we ended up being able to kind of do in that time period. The really critical benefits of being an early adopter working with the TREvolution team is that we had, and I don't say this lightly, we had incredible support from the core TREvolution team. As some of the other projects talked about, we met with them on a regular basis. We met with them about ad hoc problems that we had. We also had the opportunity to meet with all of the other early adopters. And so I should say that so many of our outputs were also informed by almost all of the other early adopters wanting to participate or driving forward initiatives that we also kind of worked and incorporated in. We were able to really kind of shape how things worked in the TREvolution program. And I think that in and of itself has been why TREvolution is so exciting and so useful for other organizations, because we didn't have to change kind of established ways of working. We were able to do it like new, and we were able to kind of really contribute to the overall program. And those outputs were very much incorporated into the program. So SATRA version 2.0 and its federation pillar has come out. It's just been published, and so many of the findings from Panorama, the core team kind of took on board to really kind of make the federation pillar something that is usable by organizations. And we were able to demonstrate our benefits of being an early adopter to the wider TRE community. So if you have the opportunity to do a kind of early adoption project or test tools while they're in pilot phase, I cannot say enough, do it, but make sure that you have the appropriate kind of resourcing for that. And finally, to talk about our public involvement and engagement on Panorama. So we had PIE leads from across the partners, and these are all specialists in public involvement and engagement, and the team that kind of delivered this work are all deeply rooted in public involvement and engagement. Our project was underpinned by findings from a citizens jury. So the actual first big deliverable that we did for Panorama was a citizens jury around the concept of federation. And that really helped us in thinking about what the public's recommendations were for what we need for federation. And then throughout the project, we conducted workshops with our public groups across the north of England to ensure that the project captured and responded to the specific regional concerns. We realized very quickly that each of the regions did have independent or individual concerns that were specific to those regions, but also some overarching collective concerns. So the public told us that we need to co-design a public-facing explanation of federation, that we needed to develop and publish trust-building protocols. We needed to harmonize our access and our governance standards to support federated IG, that we needed to publish a federation assurance framework. So this is essential in having clear descriptions of how our federation would work in practice. We were challenged to create transparency standards across a number of areas. And this is around funding, pricing models, reinvestment commitments, how we work with commercial organizations, and crucially, the kind of real world impact and outcomes that demonstrate public benefit for any projects that we're going through our SDEs. And we did, and they also told us that we needed to coordinate our PPIE activities across a federation. And a huge thank you to the Focus 5 early adopter and the PIE lead there, who conceived of a kind of public, a kind of PPIE dashboard that would kind of enable organizations to think about how they coordinate their PPIE activities. Ultimately, they said for us that we needed a clear, simple, easy to understand description of what is meant by a federated TRE network, and crucially, how it operates. So it has to be focused on that kind of operational reality and accurate, plain spoken, and tested for comprehension. So key findings and benefits to the sector from Panorama. So we did all of the technical work, but I think what we kind of came to ultimately as a project team is that Panorama demonstrates that we can shift the conversations about whether systems and organizations can technically connect to how organizations prepare themselves and work together and consistently to maintain ongoing trustworthiness. So some next steps we're taking a number of the lessons learned from Panorama, and I'm working with a number of people on the core TREvolution program, and we're working together to actually create a framework to help organizations operationalize federation. So it's really new. It's just in its kind of thought infancy stage. We're looking for use cases or organizations that might want to use treaty to help them operationalize federation. But effectively, what we've come to is that we need a guide and we need some support to help us support organizations in creating persistent federation, which requires a framework to support how organizations prepare themselves to work together safely and consistently, and how to maintain ongoing operations. So huge thank you to all of the colleagues. There were over 40 people involved in this project across all of the Northern SDEs, the incredible team, Data Connect team. I miss you guys at the University of Sheffield. And you can find, huge thanks to RDS, my new organization that gave me time to help finish out this work. And you can find all of our outputs available via the QR code. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, huge collaboration within the project, but also great to see the way that you and other projects work together and capitalize on opportunities for collaboration. Any questions for Kate and team? I can see Martin just asked if a link to the dashboard could be shared directly.
Yeah, so it's one of the project outputs. So if you go to the QR code, you'll be able to see the outputs of the dashboard. They are mock-ups of what it would look like and the thinking behind it. And I know that the SDE network are funding this now to become a core part of the SDE network. So watch the space via the SDE network.
Great. We'll be on the lookout for that for sure. Yeah, I think it'd be a fantastic resource. We have questions. So are you by chance potentially interested in organizations outside of the UK for treaty use cases?
Absolutely. So the Health Data Research Network Canada is very interested. So please, I'll pop my details in the chat. I'm happy to work with any organization, myself and Felix Ritchie, who's been helping a lot of organizations implement the 5 Safes framework. Felix and I are kind of working on treaty now, and we are very happy to work with organizations on this, and both in the UK and outside of the UK.
Fantastic. There we go. Okay, so Kate will put those contact details into the chat for you to follow up on. Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you to the team as well for your work there. I'm going to now hand over to Sharon from the Safer project based at SEL. Thank you, Sharon.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to try and share my presentation, so just bear with me for 1 second. Hold on 1 moment. Okay, can you see that from the first slide? Is that showing from the first slide? Yeah, okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting us to speak today. I'm going to run you through a little bit about the Safer project, just the same issues really that everybody's been talking through, the insights, the key learnings and the outcomes. My name is Sharon Hayes, and I'm the head of legislation, of legal governance for the SAIL Data Bank. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of SAIL. The Safer project stood for SAIL Advancing Federated Exploration and Readiness. And so the project really focused on delivering federation in the real world. So quite similar, I suppose, to a lot of the themes that Catherine was just talking about. And I was really interested to listen to what she was saying. I think when a lot of us started on the project, I think, you know, I went along to the sort of starting off of all of the DARE work around this. And a lot of the terminology was quite, you know, new to us. We didn't really quite, you know, understand how these things were going to fit together. It's actually only now, I think you can really clearly see how all these bits of the jigsaw really do fit very clearly. I mean, SAIL's focus in all of this is very much around the governance. And I think probably a lot of you may agree that governance can often be seen as really dull, it can be seen as unexciting, it can be seen as a bit that holds everybody back. But actually, I would really counter that. I think explaining the governance and explaining the challenges around federation is probably one of the more challenging parts. And that's not taking anything away from our brilliant technical colleagues who are pioneering in all of these areas. But if we can't get the governance right, if we can't get the structures right, the policies and the procedures, then we're never going to take the stakeholders with us. We're never going to take the data providers with us. And so the Safer project really was about trying to get to grips with all of that. It was trying to understand how we have those conversations with the stakeholders, with the public. And it was also about actually implementing a set of procedures, policies, measures, a framework around operationalising federation, and obviously incorporating all of the elements that colleagues have just been talking about in terms of their projects. So tying that together in terms of that governance bundle, and looking at those key audiences and making sure that we can communicate to them and appropriately in a way that they understand that. So really the project in a nutshell was about getting SAIL, we termed it fit to federate from a governance perspective, and to actually run projects in the real world, and to translate those relationships. And as I say, part of our outputs were policies, protocols, legal agreements. So the TREvolution capabilities that were in scope for our project, they were the technical solutions around teleport, so looking at how that would run, how those governance bubbles would work, how they would operate. The 5 safe TES tools, again, how they would run, how the operational and governance procedures around those would work. And then federated learning as well, so considering the different models of federated learning, the implications that applying those or using them in the real world might have, and how software like Director would link, and the functionality of that software, how that might play into legal agreements, and documentation and policies, and also the other things that obviously all of us work with in our day-to-day roles, things like, you know, costing, charging, insurance, indemnity. They can seem quite dry and quite dull, but if we can't get them right, we're not ever able to implement some of these wonderful technical solutions. So part of our project was actually firstly for us to understand how those technical products and solutions would work. So we spent a lot of time sitting down, discussing them, trying to work them through, and translating those governance implications. So looking at, you know, for example, gap analysis around where there might be things that we needed to put into place, to understand what we needed to create or adapt. And obviously, given that there were 3 different models for, you know, those federated tools, there were 3 separate potential sets of implications. So there was a lot of sort of examination at a sort of micro scale of how these things integrated and dovetailed with SAIL's existing processes. Any of you who know anything about SAIL, you'll know that we've been around for almost just shy of 20 years. So SAIL obviously has a set of very well rehearsed processes and procedures, and it can seem often quite scary, can't it, when you're having to change things and adapt. But I think that is a fundamental pillar really of being able to undertake federation, is that we have to be agile. We have to be able to work with existing systems and make them work across the piece for all of the collaborators in these projects. We were lucky, we had legal, governance, compliance and accreditation expertise in-house. We also had our business and finance team that we brought in. We had a lot of extensive public engagement, so I'll touch on that in a couple of the other slides. And all of those skill sets really working towards this common aim of actually getting final products into place that could allow partners to feel comfortable working within a framework. And we also had our sale technical team who were providing some of the technical federated solutions to use as consultants. We were able to go back to talk to them, to discuss with them, sort of in an iterative approach, really, to understand from them what they needed from us and what we could provide to help them deliver what they needed to deliver. And part of that, as I say, was understanding the data touch points, the journey, the divergence from the current model, the well-established model that we had, mapping our processes, and understanding where those key parties interact with the processing. InSale had operated previous federated projects, but they were very much manual during COVID. So we did have learning to build on from that. But as I say, there was a lot of work to be done in a short period of time. In terms of the benefits of adoption, I mean, obviously SAIL, like all of the collaborators and the early adopters, we see federation as a key area of future development. It is clearly the next logical step to build on analysis at scale to access wider populations. And having that framework to facilitate federation is key. So as part of our outputs, we produced a consortium agreement, which we felt, from our perspective, covered all bases really, potentially to allow collaborating partners to work together, setting out all of the fundamentals around the governance, around the technical controls, around things like, insurance, indemnity, access, etc. And again, engaging in strategic partnerships and collaborations through a federation are, they're part of that ongoing journey, I think, that we're all on, really, to develop and expand the scale of research. Again, part of the thought process really around our project was to make sure that we didn't really leave any stones unturned. So we had lots of meetings where we tried to think about every element that federation could touch within SAIL, so that when data providers or researchers came to us and had perhaps a difficult question, that we were prepared to have an answer for it. But also, I think it's important as well to recognise that this is a journey that I guess we're all going on, and there may be things that we certainly can all learn from the experience of others. So I think you do have to have that level of being able to sort of take on the views, take on the feedback, accept that we don't know everything, but we're all learning together, really. And a big part, again, of the process was considering and understanding the risks, where there may be risks in terms of, I'll give you an example, for example, in terms of federated learning, the release of models and how that could be managed. So those proposals around what legal mechanisms could be put into place. So it was a sort of case of actively trying to consider and think outside of the box with an effort to sort of come up with comprehensive solutions. So the project used the technologies and integrated them really into the existing systems and the protocols. And SAIL is now entering the next phase of this, which is testing this in real world scenarios. We are actively engaged in 2 projects which will actually deal with and implement federation in real world scenarios. And obviously, that challenge is there, isn't it, clearly, of working across organisations and legal jurisdictions. Obviously, we have devolved nations as well to consider, and potentially with federation in the years to come, we might be talking about international collaborations and the challenges of sharing that data globally. But I think without projects like SAFER providing these governance solutions, and obviously there will be other projects as well and partners who will be working on this, federation can remain theoretical, because until we can actually take partners with us and persuade data owners that, you know, this is a safe thing to do and an effective thing to do, we will not be able to take people with us on that journey. In terms of the model analysis that we undertook, obviously each of those technical models is different from a governance and a compliance perspective and carried a differing risk profile. So the 5 safes TES model and the federated learning models, where the data doesn't move, have a lower risk, but the teleport was more complex and had a higher risk. So we were considering that throughout. And obviously needing to consider those technical and accreditation controls potentially for running a pop-up. And so writing that into a consortium agreement was really critical for us. And that was one of our clear outputs from the project, and keeping that fit for purpose. Key deliverable, again, a massive element of the work that we undertook was public involvement and engagement. So we ran a series of open consultations and engagement activities. We did that in person. We did also have hybrid events, we had meetings, etc. And that obviously fed into future discussions and debates around the whole subject. We use Sales Advisory Panel, so Sale has a long-standing consumer panel, and sought their views, which were massively helpful. And obviously our IGRP, our Information Governance Review Panel. So how, for example, does a panel consider and review applications from multiple data sources? What challenges might there be around that? The requirement for extra training, these type of things. And that whole concept of introducing that understanding of federated data, and our key partners, obviously for ourselves, are people like Welsh Government, who are a massive sponsor of SAIL, and obviously data, you know, have huge interest in the Welsh data, Public Health Wales, and our partners Digital Health and Care Wales, and leading in really to discussions with researchers, the ICO, policymakers, and obviously our partner TREs and SDEs. And we were talking to them about things like acceptability of the federation model, the governance, the compliance, the security, legal challenges and changes. And I think very succinctly, the overwhelming feedback was hugely positive, but I think what came through every single time was we have to maintain the standards, and that's probably something that's come through for all of the partner projects, really. This is not about lessening of the standards, about maintaining them to take everybody with us and maintain the trust. Feedback to the TREvolution team. Obviously we have been in-house in Swansea developing a number of the technical solutions, so we were able to discuss the application of those tools and the technical solutions with our team in-house, and obviously have that discussion as they develop the technology, and we applied it within the operational setting, and we were able to update, as I say, in terms of an iterative process, that feedback from the team, which helps us gain a good understanding of how that governance wrapper should work for everybody in the real world. And obviously, you know, attending those regular feedback events by DARE and listening to the other partners was really valuable, and contributed to that ongoing dialogue with the SAFER team.
Sharon, we're just over on time, so if you could just perhaps get to the last slide in terms of the impact.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'll finish off. Sorry, I do apologise. It's such a topic that we've been so involved in. I think sometimes it's quite hard to cut short. But there we go. I mean, just finally, just to say, obviously, that influence and that discussion was a two-way street, really. But we've produced a range of different outputs and products, and we're very, very happy to engage with anybody who has any interest further along the line, to discuss any of that with us.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Okay, I'll just stop sharing.
Fantastic work.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
share a link to outputs, including the free videos that you produce, which I think are a really great resource in terms of explaining federation. And then if people have questions, please drop them into the chat. And we'll just move swiftly on to the Focus 5 team. Apologies, 10 minutes there. So just off you go with that. Thank you, Becca.
Sorry, can you see my
Yeah,
screen?
can see the slides and hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short so we can finish on time. So I'm Becca Wilson from the University of Liverpool, and I led the Focus 5 project. We were a collaboration between the DataShield team at University of Liverpool, NHS Secure Data Environment partners from the North West and Wessex regions, and this was represented by Lancashire Teaching Hospital and University Hospital Southampton. We worked with some SMEs and also public contributors from the SD network patient advisory groups as well. So the aim of Focus 5 was to test the use and I guess the feasibility and whether it was possible to use 5-Safe's RO crates to track, audit and really support federated analysis in a harmonized way across multiple organizations. And this was important because particularly during federated analysis, information, if not data, information is shared across different organizations and environments. We specifically were using the SDE network as the context and DataShield as the context because they contain a mix of infrastructures. And so we wanted to investigate compatibility and the possibility of integration with those. For those that are not familiar with DataShield, it is an established federated analysis framework that comes out of academia here in the UK, and it's enacted through a series of open source software. It's been used with real world data, longitudinal studies and trials as well for over 13 years. So how did we work? Our approach was really, we adopted a co-design approach, which means embedding the PPIE and the stakeholder engagement with the development whilst it's kind of ongoing. So we worked collaboratively, as Kate said, across the other adopter projects. We worked with patient engagement and technical professionals across the SDE network, other DARE communities, and also within our DataShield community as well. And we had, as I mentioned, we had input from public advisors from the patient and public advisor groups linked to the SDE network. And so the way we worked was we iterated across stakeholder engagement, technical development, and evaluation of the tools that we were developing. And so on the technical side, we tested the 5-Safe's RO crates within the SDE infrastructure, or a couple of different SDE infrastructures, and within the DataShield infrastructure and context. This allowed us to identify gaps and give feedback to the TREvolution team about these, as well as it allowed us to develop some new tools to support the RO crates ecosystem as well. And then what we did was we demonstrated integration of these different systems so that things could work together. So, for example, RO crates and Katra from TREvolution, making that compatible to work with different SDE infrastructures and DataShield infrastructures. So on this slide, there is a summary of the tools that we contributed to and created during Focus 5. And if you want to see some of these working in action together, if you scan the QR code or go to the link bit.ly/focus-5, you can see a video of these tools working together to provision an SD workspace, research workspace, and to run a federated analysis with DataShield. So so in terms of outputs, we fed back to the TREvolution team about the RO crates standard. In particular, it was our request to expand this concept beyond workflow-based analysis approaches. And this is because it would allow a broader variety of federated analysis tools to actually adopt RO crates within themselves. The The second thing we did was develop an R package in order to create, read and manage RO crates. Prior to this, there were packages in other languages, there were libraries in other languages to do this, but there was nothing available in R. And so this helps not just the health research domain and health research projects, but also any research domain that is more of an R-based analysis environment. The team at Lancashire Teaching Hospitals, they developed this suite of tools called Creator, which uses the 5 Safes R crates along with other standards and other standards to operationalize provisioning of environments in an SDE and the governance and tracking the governance requirements of those processes as well. And finally, in DataShield, we developed a package to capture federated analysis provenance using RO crates in order to be able to feed back this information to the data controller and also the analyst. In both Creator and the DataShield package DSRO crates, the information captured in RO crates was aligned to the 5 Safes framework. So safe data, safe projects, safe people, safe settings, and safe outputs. I'll just cover a couple of the, I guess, key findings. Some of these have already been reported or are similar to what others in the other adopter projects found. I would say that, like all the adopter projects, TREvolution, there was a slight mismatch between the timelines of when the adopter project started and TREvolution, but also for our particular use cases, the SDE network was still building its infrastructure and processes and things. So there was a little bit of a slower start perhaps in our project. We identified, part of our work identified some limitations of the 5 Safes R crates in its form at the start of the project, and we reported this back to the RO crates team. This included, yes, the inability to capture fully all of the metadata required for data provenance data provenance in an SDE. It was only usable for workflow-based analytics, as mentioned, not the approaches used by other federated tools. And there was no mapping of RO crate items to the 5 Safes categories. And upcoming versions of the 5 Safes RO crates will address some of these issues. Stakeholder engagement, we worked with other adopter projects. Kate has mentioned some of the outputs from our PPIE work. One thing that came out both professional stakeholder engagement and both working with public members as well was that concerns were raised really around whether data was actually being moved between environments during a federated analysis, and this really reinforced kind of the raison d'etre for Focus 5 and the driver for us to build a standards-based auditing framework based on RO crates for federated analysis. So I'll just cover some of the impact of our work. So basically, through the Focus 5 project, we demonstrated that RO crates can be applied in this way to improve transparency, auditing, and collaboration linked to the actual analysis layer. We demonstrated scalable deployment of 5 Safes compliant federated projects using the Creator tool. Auditability of the analysis is capable through, is also possible using RO crates, but certainly within a DataShield context. And testing was successful across 2 NHS SDE regions, the North West and Wessex, between Lancashire Teaching Hospital and University Hospital Southampton. Let's see, I'll probably just because we're short on time. In terms of future work, so what have we been doing since, I guess, the project's closed earlier this year? So Focus 5 for us was not an isolated project. We've continued to build upon the development and the key learnings of Focus 5 in, for example, a next-gen catalyst DARE project called Grove that we're participating, and also in an MRC-funded project of ours called Federated North. Originally, Federated North was actually focused on integrating and operationalizing Data Shield across the northern NHS secure data environments, collaborating with partners at Lancashire Teaching Hospital and Bradford Teaching Hospital. And that was going to be done through the adoption of national standards and best practice, just like those that are coming out of DARE, as well as those from established open source communities like the Odyssey community. Since then, we've actually spread a bit beyond the north, and we're working towards Data Shield being installed in the development environment across the SDE network. And at the same time as we're doing this work, we're continuing to co-design our tool development, so embedding our stakeholder engagement, which is both at a national and an international level, working with stakeholders across academia, healthcare, industry, and the public to actually facilitate tool development. We're going further than that was possible to do in Focus 5, in that we're actually going to integrate TREvolution StatBarm framework from the SACRO project into Data Shield as well. So we're adopting this framework because it standardizes how we can describe the risks of disclosure, and how it allows us to describe how our existing statistical mitigations in Data Shield for automated output checking, how they actually work and how they align with that framework. And this isn't a small task, because we have hundreds of functions in the core parts of Data Shield, and we have thousands when we consider the open source community packages too. We're also building a web dashboard to bring all this auditing information together during a Data Shield analysis. And this is where the Focus 5 work using RO crates really comes into play, because this is part of that, the information, the analysis provenance information being packaged up in RO crates is going to feed into this system. And we continue to advocate for wider adoption of RO crates and the StatBarm framework, not just in other research projects within the data community, but also in federated analysis tools more generally. We have proven that these are adoptable standards by, pretty much anyone. And our final piece of work is around investigating how other disclosure, control and privacy methods that are used in Data Shield, including differential privacy, can actually be included in this sort of RO crates standards-based audit framework as well. And what this will allow is safe integration and operation of third-party federated learning and AI tools like Flower AI in Data Shield. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Becca. Yeah, crunch for time. But yeah, fantastic presentation. Really great to hear about the ongoing work that's being done around Focus 5 and the tools that we used. Thank you to everyone for joining. Apologies for going over by a couple of minutes, but it was really great to have you all here to hear about the fantastic work that each of the early adopter projects have been doing. Do please still continue following the DARE UK programme. You can sign up to our newsletter for updates and find out more about all of our streams of work. I'll just put QR codes on the screen. And if you do have any questions for Becca, we can take them offline. Her email address is available on our website, I believe. But Becca, if you're happy, just put the best contact email address in the chat now as well, then people can follow up. So we will finish there. I'll just put QR codes up so long as it allows me. There we go. Thank you to everyone for joining. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.